How's it going, guys? Alan Butler here again today. We're going to go over some joining and some of my biggest pet peeves around joining. So yesterday we discussed some of the tolerances that were provided within the building code and within our project specifications. Generally, the project specs are much more stringent than what the building code is. So if you take the extra time and you pay attention to some of the things that I'm about to go over, then your work looks great. You know, a lot of times they're not going to come up, they're not going to measure your head joints, they're not going to measure your bed joints. So some of the things that I look out for, I've got here. All right, so right here is a perfect example where they struck their head joint into the bed joint and they never ran their joiner back through the head joint, back through the bed joint to close that joint off. So what it should look like, it should look like this right here. So at some point in time, they struck the head joint. They likely struck the bed joint. They probably had to hit the head joint again at some point and then maybe struck back through. So I would lay pretty quick, and then I would take a lot of extra time in my joining. So the guy that laid this, they did a pretty good job on their, so we got some stack bond on this project. But the joints on their stack bond, they took a lot of time and really did a good job on joining the stack bond together. That right there is a perfect joint. That's how I like it to look anyway. Now, another thing is striking the old to the new. And what I mean by that is they laid all of this work down here, they laid one day, and then the next morning they come back and started here. So this work was hard and this work was new. So whenever they laid this course, a lot of masons will start off and strike just the new fresh head joints, and they'll leave these head joints below and not join them. When they do, that leaves this bed joint curled up over top of this head joint. So once you take off the next day or the next evening or whatever it is, always strike your old to the new. So whenever this all cures properly and everything's washed, it'll all blend in. You won't be able to tell where the mason started and where they stopped. They also did a pretty decent job joining their soldier down here. There's a couple places where they probably could have ran the joiner through one more time before they brushed up, or maybe they could have put a little bit tougher brush on it. Another thing that we do is everywhere like your work sets in on inside corners or anything like that, we have a standard. So our standard is that all inside corners and everywhere that your work sets in, we cut it flush. And that is just so everybody knows what to do in those situations, so you don't have several different types of conditions all over the project. Now, in a perfect world, you want your work to be thumbprint hard, which is easy to do with veneer, especially when there's a good absorption rate on your brick. But with CMU, a lot of times we're raising the scaffold boards, raising the scaffold. Sometimes you have to strike it before it gets to the point where it's thumbprint hard and it's a little bit wet. In that situation, strike it wet, brush it at a 45-degree angle, then come back later and joint the brush strokes out. All right, we'll check out some CMU a little bit later.